what's interesting is that there's this idea that young people are only into like low or non-alcoholic wines, but really they're just drinking what fits the moment. Sometimes that's a glass of chilled, crunchy red wine on the patio in the lower. Other times it's a shot of mezcal. The industry needs to stop forcing wine into every situation and just let it be part of the broader experience.
Welcome to another episode of the Italian Wine Podcast, the Next Generation series, where we aim to answer one simple question: what are the new generations up to when it comes to wine and food? My name is Karla Ravagnolo. Join me as we dive into the latest trends in Italian wine. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Italian Wine Podcast. My name is Carla. I'll be your host for this episode of the Next Generation series. Today, I'm very much excited to welcome Travis Padilla, who is a New York-based sommelier currently working at Il Buco Alimentari Vineria, but also he's working for the cultural movement of wine and hip-hop. With a diverse background in hospitality and wine, Travis blends classic wine expertise with modern culture intersections. As a present brand ambassador for both Calvisius Caviar and Living Roots Winery, he is also heavily involved in pushing inclusivity within the wine industry through projects like Wine Unify. I am more than excited to talk with you today, so please give it up a warm welcome to Travis.
Woo! I'm super excited to be here too.
Yeah, so actually, from the bio, we can already understand you have a lot going on. So, would you mind telling us a little bit more about your background, what you do?
Great. Well, I started in nightclubs, honestly, because the money was good, but there was a lot of noise in the background, so I felt very strongly that I couldn't make any real impact. The end goal for me is to fight food, job insecurity, using hospitality as a means to drive that. It's done so much for me, and to be able to leave the door open behind me is very important so the next person can walk in and feel that same level of security that the industry has offered me. Nowadays, I'm working with a lot of cool climate wines, and really pushing boundaries with caviar and creating a form of accessibility through that. So I guess in a sense, wine is a way to connect with people for me and go a bit more beyond just the what's in the glass itself and focus a little bit more on what's happening around the glass.
That's actually pretty amazing. I really like how you were already actually talking about inclusivity and the fact that you were pretty honest about like, oh, I started working like in a bar and then actually wanted to have the opportunity to deepen also the knowledge and the conversation also with people, to welcome everybody. So you started in a bar, as you said, but now you are like a certified sommelier. You have gained a lot of experience. But my question for you is, in the New York City scene, having worked with such a varied category of customers and clients, how would you describe the wine lovers in New York City, the wine experts? Like, what is the customer scene in New York City? What does it look like?
Well, from the beginning of when I worked in the nightclubs, essentially, I always was the champagne buy. So one thing I will say is that, and that's kind of what got me into wine afterward. One thing I'll say is we are always slightly ahead of the curve. I notice this roughly feels like 5 to 6 years ahead of a lot of other people on the East Coast. I think a lot of it can be just because we have such a wide variety of small distribution that we can purchase from, as opposed to some other states that really have three main books that they buy from. So in that sense, we have a lot more variety. And that leads us to really appreciate the full spectrum of what wine can offer, whether it's something classic like a Brunello di Montalcino or an experimental co-fermentation from the Hudson River Valley. People want something that feels genuine and really exciting. The city sets trends because we're open to everything. It's what matters is that the wine reflects the diversity and the dynamic of the people who are drinking it. And New York is the perfect place for that.
Obviously, in New York City, you have the opportunity to meet the world, as I mentioned in a previous episode. But do you think it's still people from all over the world, but with a very specific background, also in terms of like purchasing power, knowledge, or is it something that more people are curious to approach? Like, is it something that it's felt like it's still a little bit exclusive, or is it more open and welcoming? How would you describe it from this point of view?
I think it depends on where you're coming from. Who what's your first level of exposure? If you want to find a form of accessibility, it's there for you. But there are tons of ways to kind of be locked out of that. And sometimes it involves people, sometimes it involves places, and sometimes it involves just the things that revolve around wine. I feel very strongly that young consumers are leading the shift away from a lot of Eurocentrism in wine. Uh, Take the way people are rethinking the hybrids, the co-ferments, the indigenous varieties. It's not just a way to push back against tradition, but also a way to honor what wine can be in different forms, whether it's Vitis Lambrusca or Vinifera. These wines are gaining a lot of traction because they break out of the mold. And, the city's at the center of this shift. But if you wanted to go into a more classic restaurant, you wanted to sit down with some older people who are having wine, you can also get the exposure of the very classic, very traditional styles of wine. And I think there's a time and a place for both of those things.
I totally agree. So now that you've touched on younger generations, where do you think they are most likely to consume their wine in a city like New York City? Like, do you think it's something that they are willing to drink during a picnic park, or is it something they only consider when suggested in a wine bar? Like, what is the consumption rate among younger?
From my experience, it seems like there are certain neighborhoods that have a younger demographic and have an incredible food scene that kind of ties into a lot of the wine scene. I used to work at Somtime in the Lower East Side with Maria Rust, and the amount of young people that I have drinking wine there, it's their first time drinking wine outside of their house. And I think the level of safety is really important. What's interesting is that there's this idea that young people are only into like low or non-alcoholic wines, but really they're just drinking what fits the moment. Sometimes that's a glass of chilled, crunchy red wine on the patio in the lower. Other times it's a shot of mezcal. The industry needs to stop forcing wine into every situation and just let it be part of the broader experience. It's not about being pretentious, it's about making wine fit naturally into people's lives. The freedom younger consumers feel to experiment is essentially what's going to be reshaping our market, and what has a lot of people who aren't ready for this change extremely nervous about the future of our industry. I'm not.
Very interesting to hear because I really like how you said that the wine industry needs to understand that there's a moment and a time and a place for wine, and we should actually stop forcing people because this is the thing in different aspects of the wine industry. People feel like they need to know, right? They need to be expert in order to enjoy wine, but that's not the case. Like there's a lot of rules in a way when it comes to just enjoying a bottle of wines when the most important thing should just be to enjoy it, as you said, right? So do you see an evolution in the American palate in younger generations? Do you see any trends that are emerging as of now?
Absolutely. And I'm actually touching on that on a book that I'm working on currently. It's called The New American Palate. And essentially, my time in the restaurant's been roughly 15 years. I've noticed that the trend is leaning toward cool climate wines that are really essentially having their moment. And I think it's because we're moving past the era of parkerization, where everything had to be super big, super oaky. Even if we look at Italian wine, there was a time where a lot of winemakers maybe felt some form of insecurity because of all the Parker scores and always wanting over extraction. So they would drop full bundles of grapes to kind of bring that up. And you're starting to see even a trend in some of the classic regions like Barolo, kind of going back to the older style of winemaking before all the scores, using Botti and really getting very deep down. And what's really interesting is that I think it's more about focusing on wines that are creating a sense of place, because most young people don't even know who Robert Parker is.
Do you think, or have you ever witnessed, I don't know if you had any type of experience with this, but do you think younger generation like Gen Z, millennials care about, oh, this one got 95 points or 90 points? I don't know. Like, did this ever happen to you that somebody was curious about it or asked for a specific wine, like, oh, I want a wine that scored 90 and above?
Nah, I think they care more about like the wine that they saw on Action Bronson's TV show. They want to know like about Frank Corneliuson. They want to know about the way it's connecting. They do have some curiosity towards some of the classics too, like as a sense of a way to guide them. I think their parents care a little bit more about score, and if I see a younger person mention a score, it's usually a younger person who's consistently drinking wine with older people. And they use that as a way of leverage. Some people drink wine because it's a classy thing to do. And when you're kind of new to something, you really want to like be able to one, absorb everything, but also feel like you know everything about it. And sometimes scores can help in that way, but most of the younger generation of wine people are not really into that. I notice, if anything, they're more curious about articles that they've read. I hear a lot of younger people like, oh, Eric Asimov was talking about these Envenate wines, or how do you feel about the Canary Islands kind of thing? What about Mallorca? Like, things that they'll read, they'll kind of like pick up on, or like bloggers, or sometimes people who are like the Super Vino brothers are really popular out here, and that kind of like that they are able to reach demographics that normally wouldn't drink wine. So it's really interesting to see.
Who wants to be the next Italian wine ambassador? Join an exclusive network of 400 Italian wine ambassadors across 48 countries. Vinitaly International Academy is coming to Chicago on October 19th to 21st, and to Almaty, Kazakhstan from November 16th to 18th. Don't miss out. Register now at vinitaly.com.
Yeah, because also, like, honestly, I wasn't expecting for people to get into wine because of articles, meaning that it's interesting to see how something that is not so technical in a way, pass me the term, like an article that maybe could be connected to lifestyle or travel or food, like Forbes, I don't know, Forbes, the New York Times, Vogue sometimes, like articles written by these publications are not just about wine, but sometimes they do talk about wine. And it's just interesting to know that people that may have read a little something, maybe wines from Mallorca, wines from Albania, like something that is completely new and innovative, but connected, I don't know, to a trip, like where to go this summer, go to Albania because they have great wines and great beaches, like, you know what I mean? And that's a way, that's actually a great way to approach wine, and that is stuck in their heads. It's not like a very specific information that maybe in a week they're gonna forget. This is very efficient and interesting.
I agree with you. In the same respect, I also think that sometimes there needs to be a level of pluralism when it comes to those things, because it's important to understand, of course, the idea of going and diving into another culture. But they definitely like, and myself included, I love to take aspects of things that I find out while on vacation, and I love to kind of combine it into my own culture. For example, sherry's an incredible wine for food. Anyone that's deeply entrenched in it will tell you that. But I always like bringing it out, like, because like in a barbecue, or just something a little bit more relaxed. Or if I'm not eating, I like to drink it too. And I think that kind of like respect for both cultures, where I can kind of like pull it out as a food wine, but also pull it out as just, this is what we do out here in New York. We'll just drink sherry without food, and that's perfectly fine.
With younger generations, we all know we spend time on TikTok, we spend time on Instagram. the internet is our home, basically. What do you think wineries or wine companies can improve to better communicate or to better approach younger generations? Like, what are your thoughts? Some strategies, some tips for wineries, maybe something they're doing wrong.
Well, I think that social media is an extremely powerful tool. It can be somewhat of a double edged sword. For me, it's not about pushing a brand like a used car. Young people can spot when you're full of crap immediately. And influencers do have a role in this space. But for me, only the ones who keep it real are actually cutting through the noise. You've got people who are genuinely connecting to wine, to the culture, to storytelling. And then you've got some people who are just chasing like the next sponsorship deal. I strongly believe that it's the authentic voices that are really going to be able to do it right. But some of the actual wineries that seem to be kind of left in the past have kind of missed the memo. It's more about that authenticity. And I think it's a direct reflection into the way the consumers are spending.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because also, like, sometimes, I don't know about you, but like sometimes I go across a few accounts on Instagram or social media, and many wineries, if you just remove the brand name, they look the same. Like they don't have any personality. They all make great wine. They all have a beautiful vineyard. Like I feel like now it is time for wineries to just do that little extra step. Like,
Absolutely. That level of authenticity and kind of grittiness is super necessary. And even if it's just somebody in front of a camera, short format, of course, is what's happening right now because there's too much information that's out there. But somebody who's just, maybe not necessarily always following a trending reel. As soon as I see that, I know like there's something being pushed. You're trying to run in certain ways that don't feel authentic. I think just raw authenticity, tell your story. If you want to have a strong opinion with respect to agriculture and the fact that you are the middle person between a farmer and somebody who enjoys the agricultural product that the farmer is putting out.
totally agree. So I read a little extract from your book, and you mentioned that basically younger generations are looking for inclusive, organic, very fresh, easy drinking wines, better if sustainable and ethical as well, right? So, what do you mean with the word ethical?
So I think that sustainability goes beyond just organic farming and making biodynamic wine. People want to know how wineries are treating their employees and what they're giving back to the community. That's why we're seeing more attention on projects like Jade Marley's Anything But Vinifera and some of those hybrid grapes, which I know I keep touching on, but it's such a huge part of what's emerging in the New York wine industry, which can be more sustainable in certain climates. So that's why it's kind of taken that focus because of climate change and that activism behind it. Wine on Wheels is also a project I work with. Yannick Benjamin, my mentor and a great friend of mine. They're pushing this conversation forward because they're using wine to raise funds and awareness for people with disabilities. Whether that's building custom wheelchairs, just making sure that soft touches, like rather than the door opening as you go backward, it slides. Having bars that are at a height where if somebody who has a disability wants to just walk in, specific cutlery, and you know, being with him, I was able to really learn the importance of ethics in wine as well. What I mean by that extra one plus one equals four, that sweet space in between of showing humanity to people and showing respect to your neighbor.
This is beautiful. And actually, I would like to ask you, in your opinion, because I know you are originally from Dominican Republic, like me. So,
Bello mio.
bello mio, de verdad.
You in Italy now, so we say principale, principalmente.
Exactly. No, but you touched on Wine on Wheel. This is actually mainly about inclusivity, ethics, and inclusivity as well. What do you think, in your honest opinion, is the status of inclusivity in the wine industry, and what is your experience?
There's so many ways of of opening the door for inclusivity. One of the ways is amplifying voices. The other way is providing funding for those who may not have it currently. And, that's why I was involved with Wine Unify very early in my wine career. So prior to getting into Wine Unify, I actually already had a certification from the Sommelier Society of America. But through Wine Unify and the efforts that they've put forward, I've been able to take trips to Washington, and to travel out of the state almost feels impossible sometimes in the restaurant industry because we don't have paid vacations. If we need to leave with the cost of living currently in New York City, it's almost impossible to come back and not be behind on your bills. The stress that comes with that, of course, Wine on Wheels, you have anything but vinifera. But I've also realized that when working with the Calvisius Caviar with the Jacques Pepin Foundation, reaching out and getting scholarships for people who want to go to culinary school. So it's this whole ecosystem of inclusivity that's out there. And I noticed that my experience with it has essentially shaped everything with what I wanted to do and the end goal. I noticed that the biggest checks that I've ever cashed have been from work that I've done for free with many of these organizations that I just mentioned. And I think it's only going to get better as time goes on. It's unfortunate that in order for it to have happened, something tragic had to happen, with George Floyd, Eric Garner, and all of the other people that have been lost to kind of shake the room, or looking at the Quartermaster Psalms, for example, with some of the sexual harassment and discrimination allegations that had to happen for them to really kind of turn it around and start over. I've been able to reap the benefits of it. Many other people have reaped the benefits of it. And it's going to shape the future of the wine industry because the Black, Latino, gay community, we are the underrepresented voices, and we have a dollar to spend too. And our dollar matters, and our thoughts matter, and our community matters. And continuing to push that narrative forward is what I'm dedicating the rest of my life to. And hopefully, I'll be able to go and pull some people out of it as well.
I literally have goosebumps because I couldn't agree more with everything you said. But on another note, it's not actually another note because this project it's still about inclusion and inclusivity, giving the opportunity to everybody. Also, just to approach wine, especially when it comes to BIPOC people. I'm talking about wine and hip hop, the cultural movement. Would you like to give us a little more information about it? A brief introduction?
this is this has been something I'm passionate about for a long time. When I first started in the industry, Jermaine was somebody I was always trying to find something to relate to. So I was like, okay, I know I want to be a Som, but let's look at other people who've made it. So I started just keywords Bronx, keyword um, hip hop, keyword like just figuring out things that I wanted to do. How can I bring more people into the fold? And the first person who came up was my boss and great friend, Jermaine Stone. So his project, Wine and Hip Hop, it started off as a podcast. It's had many guests there. He always, makes it really inclusive, and it's like, we'll talk to like Dave East, for example, was on the podcast, and he'll start off, what's your top five? Or if, let's say it's not Dave East, let's say it's a winemaker. What's your top five? That common thread between wine and hip hop is the perfect example of how wine can break out of the traditional norms. Jermaine's essentially taken the culture of hip hop, brought it into the wine world in a way that's super authentic. He didn't necessarily try to fit into the wine world rules, he made his own. And the fact that wine and hip hop has blown up the way it has shows that not only is wine for everyone, but people are receptive to drinking wine in a more interactive way. Shout out to Eric Asimov for giving us props in the New York Times and we're actually throwing a party at Domaine du Jacques. It's the second party we've ever thrown, and it's the first party that was ever thrown in the chateau.
Amazing. I'm actually honestly so excited about it because I had the opportunity to attend a couple events. I remember I went to an event in New York City that turned actually in a party because it started as a quiz. Like it literally was an educational event for people to learn about Prosecco because it was National Prosecco Week. People were divided into teams. So everybody had to be careful and pay attention to what Germain were talking about when explaining Prosecco, and then they had to answer, and you could see people discussing like, oh, I think glera is a grape, oh, I think this is the region where prosecco is made. And then there were also questions about hip hop. I remember there was one super hard questions about baking, but everybody was having so much fun because at the end of the day the team who won would get the bottle and they would like talk about, but it was interesting because seeing people active and learning and discussing the topic while having fun and discussing about wine and music and art, because then it's just a community basically that started in that event. It's really an amazing project. One last question, I guess. What do you see coming up next for you, for the culture? I mean, wine and hip hop, inclusivity, the wine industry. Give us a little foreseen.
What I see is more fellowship. I see wine transcending itself and being able to go into different avenues. And I feel like the future of wine is to be able to be cohesive with other things. I think there's a great opportunity to have a bottle of tequila, a couple beers, and a couple bottles of wine in the same cooler, and everybody's able to just be in the moment. Wine is a way to just really take yourself to another place, but also keep you grounded and let you know what's happening around you. So I think that's going to happen. I see cool climate and more less extracted wines coming to the forefront, wines that don't necessarily need more aging coming to the forefront. And I see the sustainability going to not only continue, but to snowball and get even more traction. As time goes on, I also see the opportunity for more representation on some of these judging panels, more representation for different genders and races. And I hope that, we can be pioneers in this because, it starts with just an idea and then, we take it to the top, just like hip hop.
This is amazing. This is so much exciting. I really wish you the best with all your projects. So I guess this is a wrap. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, anytime. Anytime. Stay in touch. Can't wait till you come back out to
Yeah.
the city.
I'll see you in New York City.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Let us know your thoughts on our social media at Italian Wine Podcast and follow us to keep up with the next generation of Italian wine people. Cheers!